I was about 20 years old when I started working as a security guard for this local company. At the time, I didn't have any plans to go to college or anything, and since I was just shortly 2 years after my high school, I wanted to start to looking around for work so I can earn some money to one day to be able to move out to my own place. My parents had no problem with me staying with them so as long as it took. And the only type of work I could find at the time was about just part-time at McDonald's or even at Walmart. So I took Walmart. My name is Andrew, and I'm 30 years old now and still working for this local company as security guard. Just mentioned. And I was about 20 years old when I found out that this local company that was looking to hire a new security guard for night shifts. I was like, this is way better paid than I had at Walmart. And it's night shift, and since I have been doing some night shift at Walmart, so there wouldn't be any difference. And I went there and I was hired. And for the next several years, it actually went perfect. I had no issues at all. But then, the only one time that was really most creepiest and also probably the dangerous, and it all happened in 2017. And since I have been doing this for a number of years, and since my shifts start around 7 p.m. and last until 7 a.m. the next morning. And since I've been doing this for a couple of years now, I had no problems doing my shifts. But my main duty is mainly to sit in a small room with a screen that has security cameras around the property, and also sometimes even to walk around just to make some rounds. And I had no problem with that. And they're only mostly animals that manage to sneak in that sometimes been spotted on security cameras like foxes, rabbits, deers, or you name it. But one evening, this happened around November. I don't remember exact date. But this was around, I believe it was around mid-November. It was getting cold. And just around 11 p.m., the alarm goes off that someone had entered the warehouse. I looked at the cameras, but I couldn't find anyone outside or inside. This warehouse was, of course, crowded with boxes and with shelves. So, and making it also dark, it made it a bit also harder to even, well, to seeing around. And since my main duty also had to, if the alarm goes off, I had to look around inside the building just to make sure if there was nothing there. So, I did. And I also should mention, sometimes it has happened that the most strangest is that a deer has somehow sneaked in the warehouse and set off the alarm. And it turned out one of the employees had forgotten to lock one of the doors, and the deer had sneaked in the property and opened the door, and that caused the alarm to go off, which made it turn off. But I entered the building, took my flashlight, looked around in many different places. I even looked up and down just to see, make sure there was no one hiding on those shelves. I mean, it might sound strange, but people can hide in many different places. But after doing maybe just 3 or 4 rounds around any building, almost 2 times around each shelves or lines and the aisles, but nothing. No signs of anything. I thought maybe there was just a glitch in the system. It wouldn't be a surprise if there were any. So I went back, turned off the alarm, and set it on again, and I went back to work, and I even did my usual duties like watching outside the building to make sure there was nothing has been entered, but nothing. But then, around 1 in the morning, suddenly the alarm goes off. I was like, what now? So I immediately looked at the camera screens, but nothing. Nothing outside. Then I looked inside, And at first it didn't see anything, but then I saw it. A dark figure crouched behind some boxes, and I immediately recognized it was a man. I was, of course, hesitated to even go in there because I wasn't even armed with anything. The only I had was a flashlight, but it wasn't even like a big one so that it could even hurt anyone. So, even though I had obligations to do something about this, so even though I probably wouldn't, but since I had my duties to do this, I went inside the door into the building, but this time I had my flashlight off, so they would even give out my position. I started to look around, and when I came to this location where this supposed man was seen, I yelled out, "This is private property, sir. You have to leave right now." I waited for us to respond or any movement, but nothing. I called out the same thing twice, but nothing. Then I took the flashlight on, looked around in almost every corner that it's possible to hide, and sure enough, I saw the man at least the second shelf behind some boxes, and he looked at me. I did notice it was a homeless man, and I also recognized this man had been in the area before, well, in this vicinity of this warehouse. He was referred as Bob, and he was in his 50s. I don't know exactly precise age, but he was in his 50s. But I would say maybe 50 or 55 maybe. And he looked very shaggy and hadn't even like showered in weeks, or rather months. I called out to him to leave this property right now or I had to call the police. But he didn't move. As I was about to call out again, he said, "Leave my house alone. This is my house." I was like, "What?" And even if I tried to yell out to him, tried to tell him calmly but more firmly that this is a warehouse and not a private home, but he refused to even believe me, and he started yelling at me, and then he showed me a pocket knife. He was armed. I wasn't. And I didn't want to take the hesitation to, I didn't want to take the chance to run into him. So I just left my hands and backward and walked backwards. But I didn't leave the whole place. I walked in the distance, I turned off my flashlight and dialed for 911, informed the operator what's been happening. And the operator told me that they have a car nearby, and they came and they walked in. I told them where I saw Bob last time. And they walked there, and sure enough, he was still there. Started yelling at them that this is his house, to leave his house right now or he would stab them. But this time he was on the ground, and they refused. So they told them simply to leave or they had to tase him. But then he charged right at them. But he tased him and he fell to the ground immediately. And right afterwards, they handcuffed him and they took him to a squad car outside. One of the officers talked to me and I gave them a statement of what had been happening. Also mentioned that the alarm went off around 11 p.m. And they believe the man somehow was sneaking in the building around 11 p.m. and was hiding the whole time. Afterwards, after my statement, the police officers left and I went back to my guard duty as before. A little bit while later, I was informed by owners that the man Bob, was arrested for trespassing and also for trying attacking the officers. I was really disturbed that he would even tried, but At least I was okay that he is now behind bars since he was under influence of alcohol for at the time. I suggested this idea to the owners that me and the other security guards should be armed with something in defense, just in case if something would happen. They were not okay with any armed weapons, but I proposed maybe a mace or pepper spray that would work. That they approved of. So ever since then, me and the other security guards have been wearing mace, just as a self-defense if something would happen. But as far as I know, neither of the other security guards has ever any form of experience like this before or, well, anything dangerous. But we would not hesitate to use it. And to Bob, well, let us hope that we never meet again. And this was my most odd experience ever. Before this incident, I had never believed in supernatural or even paranormal. My name is Eric. I was 24 years old when this happened. I've been working as a security guard for 3 years, and this happened around 2015. I have been assigned for this warehouse for 6 months, and until then, my first assignment, nothing really had happened. I had my own small room that I was sitting watching these screens for cameras from both outside and inside, and I really didn't have any big problems until now. But then, one evening, this was around shortly just after midnight. I would say maybe 12:15 a.m., something like that. But it was just a really calm evening. My shift starts around 6 p.m. and lasts until 8 a.m. the next day. I was really, well, new at the time at this work. Even though I've been at this site for just 6 months. I mean, I had asked some of the previous security guards and even the owners if there was anything I should been worried about. Maybe break-in, something like that. But they told me that there has never been any form of reports of breaking in their warehouse, as far as they know it. And the previous security guard told me it probably just will be a normal, calm night. But when he said, if something would happen, don't worry about it. I was really curious when I tried to ask him more about it. He didn't want to answer. So I went back to this work, and so 6 months came and went. And since before, nothing happened. I'm just doing my business as always, watching the cameras and even do my laps outside the building just to make sure everything was tight locked. But then, this happened. And this event alone made me a strong believer in this paranormal. You may understand why. Because one evening, I was just doing my regular night shift, as always. But it wasn't until just shortly after midnight, as mentioned, that I started hearing some strange sounds. I was really not what was the cause of it. So I looked at the cameras, but there was nothing, neither outside or inside. But the sounds are definitely coming from inside the building itself. And I was really strange to this because I have been at this site for 6 months, and this is the only time I ever heard of this. I just ignored the sound since it suddenly stopped after just a few minutes. But after around 10 minutes later, it just came back. I was really surprised about this being causing this. So I decided I cannot ignore this. Because if there was something that someone actually has been sneaking in, maybe during the daytime or even earlier before I had arrived, I would even not want to have that on my well, conscience. So I left the room, took my flashlight, and walked around. I didn't see anything was being disturbed or anything, but the sound didn't even stop. I managed to find the sound to one aisle, but when I went there, it was completely empty. But the sound didn't even stop. So I looked around with my flashlight up and down all those shelves to see if there was anyone hiding behind some one of those containers or boxes or anything, but nothing. I even called out, if anyone is in here, this is private property and you may get trespassing. You have to leave right now or I will call the police. But the sound didn't even stop though. It only continued and I couldn't even pinpoint exactly where the sound was coming from. Because suddenly the sound was just from one end to the other end of the same aisle. Sometimes they were above this in different shelf, sometimes under. It was next to me. I couldn't even tell exactly what it was about. Then I saw it. A figure. A figure was crouched, or at least peeking around the corner around by the end of the aisle. As I flashed my flashlight on it, it just vanished around the corner. I ran as fast as I could, tried to see if I could catch it, but nothing. I was just curious and also confused. So when I was in that aisle, I looked on the end back, the next one, same thing happened. I repeated this same thing for next half an hour. But when I went back to my room with cameras, I looked at the cameras and backwards. But the thing is, despite I had a perfect view, me seeing myself on the camera, I couldn't see no one. Despite I know what I saw. And this didn't happen anymore rest of that night. By the morning, when the next security guard came over to take over my shift, I informed him about this. I was expecting he maybe just getting worried, but he said, "Ah, so you've seen it? It? Ah, yeah. Didn't the previous guard tell you?" No. Well, apparently this place is actually haunted." I was dumbfounded. Like, did he just say the word haunted? Even though I was not believer of that kind of things at all. I asked him to be more clarified. And he just mentioned that a previous security guard that used to work there died in an accident. Ever since then, his spirit has been there, but not more like he never actually harmed any of the previous security guards. But he did mention that some others had quit working there after seeing this mysterious figure. But he never harmed anyone. He only made the sounds, but never damaged anything or anything. I was stunned. But the man said he wouldn't think that I would hesitate to quit right there. But the thing is, I didn't. In fact, I wasn't even scared or anything. I was just more curious and confused. And since that day, I started seeing this figure from time to time. And one time when I actually saw this by one aisle, I was like, "Hello, friend," and I waved. And somehow the figure waved back and left. Ever since then, it really hasn't been bothering me at all. I mean, I heard other stories of other security guards have been experiencing something similar, but they were scared and quit. But this figure itself was a friendly. You may call Casper the friendly ghost or something, but this ghost or spirit of a previous security guard, he only means well. And I don't see anything wrong to have him at this particular warehouse. Because sometimes when I get there, when I just walking around in this aisles or from myself, I just usually talk to myself, or as some people say, but it's actually for just keeping this spirit company, just to telling him how things been doing or how my life have been doing, and yeah. So this is my story that what made me believe in a paranormal. Thank you.